This week we'll go behind the scenes of a big global beer commercial, and in 2012, what are the lessons that brands need to follow in order to be successful? On screen, on Facebook, and also on Twitter. This is Mags on Media. A warm welcome. Let's begin this week with politics and branding. Amid all the rhetoric coming from Bloemfontein as the ANC marked 100 years, there was also a call by the party to become more modern and more professional. In other words, to think more like a brand. So let's wheel in two brand experts who have some thoughts and ideas on this subject. Sizakele Maratlule is the Chief Executive Officer of the advertising agency Grey Worldwide South Africa. Sitting next to her is Louis Sietcho, who is a leading brand consultant. To both of you, welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with you and let's establish a premise first. Can a political party, should a political party be a brand?
I actually would say it should be a brand, largely because the things you're selling are no different from a can of baked beans or a motor car. A brand in its purest form is about framing experiences so we know what to expect from you. So if you're a political party, what do you stand for? What do you promise to deliver? How do you claim to be relevant to my life? How do you meet my needs? All those things are things that a brand, whether it's a political party or a car, should be able to respond to. So anyone who thinks less than brand think is literally playing with trouble.
So Louis, to follow on from that argument, then any political party, we'll talk about the ANC specifically in just a moment, but any political party should then define a set of core or pillar values.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for the ANC, turning 100 years, a lot of people would ask the question, is it a healthy brand? You know, which then says, can you look into its leadership, its attractiveness, customer satisfaction? I mean, is it really delivering on what it promises?
Let's go down that road. You've opened the door. Is it a healthy brand?
I think it's not in the ICU, but it's nowhere near admission. I do think that. I think there are obvious cracks. There's a sense of disconnect between what the party thinks it stands for and how people experience it. Because the measure of any brand is the consumer experience. If you make me feel better about myself or make me feel as though I'm moving towards the things I desire for myself, then there's a relationship that can be formed there. But right now, I do feel there's a sense of disjuncture between what the brand thinks, or at least what the party thinks it stands for, and what is required of it as a brand that it's falling short on. I mean, if you read on the weekend press, you had that Biko kid who said, "Shut up and deliver." That's what young people are saying. So here's a conversation about, if you're 100 years old, how then do you become relevant in a contemporary sense without losing attachment to that very strong heritage?
Louis, do you see a disconnect? When I looked at the television screen, and I know you were in Bloemfontein for the event, I saw lots of happy, cheering, content supporters.
No, absolutely. I think the biggest challenge the ANC has is that it has a very broad customer base. In fact, I don't think there's any brand that exists that has that broad customer base.
Well, Coca-Cola does, doesn't it?
Well, I think what Coca-Cola does very well is the ability to respond to what its customers need in the various places it finds itself. Now, having been
so it's different messaging for different constituencies.
That's the point.
Which is what Coke does, and you're suggesting the ANC doesn't necessarily do that.
I think what the ANC needs to do, it needs to define itself very well and say to all its customers, this is what we stand for and this is what we are going to bring to you. Because when the ANC, in a sense, liberated this country, or after the elections, people had various expectations. Some people thought of driving a car overnight. Some people thought of living in a mansion. Yeah. There were different expectations people had. And obviously no party would have been able to deliver that. Now that people realize that it's not going to be what we expected, it needs to then begin to say, let's get closer, let's come together. However, Jeremy, what was very important with the past weekend that you refer to is that everybody that came there came to reclaim the organization for what they believe this organization must stand for. I'm not sure whether there's longevity in that approach, But I think at this stage it's still a brand that at a political level we'll have to reckon with.
And to extend the Coke analogy, I mean, there's also a lot of brand loyalty towards the ANC. I mean, that residual brand loyalty still exists in buckets, doesn't it?
But that's more emotional than tangible.
No.
I think
But isn't that what branding is all about?
Not necessarily, Jeremy. But the part, which is where I'll disagree with Louis a bit, that the ANC, perhaps part of its problem is that it hasn't fully defined what it stands for. And therefore, as a consequence, all of us who experience the party attach our own meaning to it. So if you've benefited, for example, if you've moved from a shack into a home, you feel it's a party that's delivered. But if you've lived on a street that still has no tar 17 years down the line, you don't feel that it's delivered. So the first point is let the party define what it stands for.
So what is that? Is that one great payoff line if we're going to look at it from an advertising
well,
perspective?
if you've said a better,
more than that?
If you've said a better life for all, then translate that better life for all, for the old lady, for the kid who's raising a family, for the single parent, for the person who wants a job. It's a beautiful premise. I love that you can make that promise, but customize its messaging, then make it relevant to people and meet them where they are in their lives and what it is they need.
Cesar Kelly, the party talks about modernization,
Yes.
becoming more professional.
Yes.
It's more than just being about on Twitter, isn't it?
Of course it is, Jeremy.
So what does it need to do?
Or starting a Facebook page that nobody attends to. One, attend to your vocabulary. I think vocabulary is what helps you keep contemporary. 10 years ago, even 20 years ago, none of us wanted to be seen driving a second-hand car. All of us are now driving pre-owned vehicles. That's the challenge for the ANC. How do you adopt a vocabulary and a terminology that makes you relevant, not only in present times, but keeps you contemporary? So stop, because political party brands, Jeremy, are not just about making promises. You're about delivery. So attend to that.
Louis, final thought from you. How does the rejuvenation, the modernization...
Well, I think those are great words to look at. But we shouldn't forget that the majority of our people still live in the villages and the townships. Don't modernize to satisfy this individual that lives in Sandton and forget this old lady that lives in Kofimvaba. As you modernize, understand that she doesn't speak English, she speaks Xhosa or Zulu. Let's modernize in that direction instead of trying the Twitter route and Facebook route that I think, in my view, it's not that matured in this country. Its time is coming, but not now. Big brand challenge. Food for thought to both of you. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate your insights. So that's all the brand stuff, but what about the centenary event itself? When Mags on Media continues, we'll talk to two companies tasked with putting a special event show together. Wasn't quite the World Cup opening and closing ceremonies, but it was impressive nonetheless.